Is the third generation Q60 the true object of desire?
Hey guys, Kevin with MAPerformance here, coming at you with another video. This is going to be kind of piggybacking off of our previous video, which was the pros and cons of modifying your Q50 or Q60. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out now and we'll hold on for just a second. All right, so now that you're back, we are going to dive in a little bit more detail on the costs of actually modifying your Q50 or Q60. For this video purpose, we are going to be taking a look at that 3.0t, not the 3.7. So if you're here for that, I'm sorry, you're gonna be sadly disappointed. But for those of you that are looking at the 3.0t, stick around because this video is for you. First, a little bit of a disclaimer here. Of course, pricing is always changing and fluctuating, especially with supply chain going on right now. So pricing in this video may be a little bit different than what you're seeing whenever you're watching this video. As always, we do price match here at MAPerformance, so if you are seeing any of these things a little bit cheaper elsewhere, give us a call or shoot us an email and we would be happy to help you out with a price match. All right, so you may have already bought your Q50 or Q60 here, so if you already did, you can skip a little bit ahead here, but if you haven't, we're gonna talk just quickly on the pricing of the car. Now, of course, the car market at the time of filming this video is pretty crazy, so these numbers may not be entirely accurate for whenever you're watching the video, but as of right now, you can pick up some of the Q50 models, some of those lower trims for right around $22,000 to $25,000. The Q60s are going to run you a little bit more, of course, being a coupe. Those are going to be in the high 20s, maybe those low 30s. And the Red Sport model, of course, is going to be right there as well. Now, as always, we would recommend picking up a completely stock car. That way you have a clean slate to start with, and chances are the maintenance is going to be more taken care of than if you buy a modified car. However, if you find a good enough deal on a bolt-on car or it has some modifications with a clean history of maintenance, you should be good to go on that as well. Now that we talked about the price of the car, you guys that skipped ahead can join us again, and we're going to jump right into the costs to modify the car. Starting off with our mild build. Now, for this distance, we are going to be talking more so about the base Q50 and Q60, and not necessarily the Red Sport. So the first thing, of course, with any modern day vehicle, most bang for your buck is going to be a tune. On the non-Red Sport model and Q60s, you can expect to pick up somewhere around about 100 wheel horsepower. Now that's pretty impressive considering the fact that you're not doing anything other than plugging a computer into it and tuning the ECU. Now this is going to put you right on par with a Red Sport model and maybe even a little bit faster than a factory one. However, for the sake of tuning, the Red Sport does pick up a little bit more power as well, so it's a somewhat even playing field. Now the next thing that most people are going to do on any vehicle is going to be an intake system. Of course, on the 3.0t, we are going to be looking at 2 intakes, 1 per side, so there's a little bit of an additional cost there. There's plenty on the market, and they'll run you somewhere around that $400 to about $500 range. More if you want some carbon fiber goodies in your engine bay. As usual, there's not a whole lot of performance to be picked up with these alone, but in conjunction with a tune is really when you'll see the performance benefits. Of course, you will get all those turbo sounds as well. Speaking of sounds, another thing that we would suggest doing at this point is getting an exhaust put on the car. Couple of different routes that you can go, whether you want to go with something that's a little bit more OEM plus, like just a muffler delete, or a full exhaust system. Either one of those is going to be a good option and really bring out those great sounds that VR30 has to offer. An axle back or muffler delete system will run you somewhere around the $350 range, and a full catback for the car is going to be somewhere between about $1,100 to about $1,500, depending on the system that you want to go with and how aggressive of the sound you're after. Moving on from the performance of the vehicle, we'll take a look at some of the exterior modifications, and probably one of the biggest ones that can change the look of the vehicle, which would be the height of it. For this mild build, we would suggest going with a set of springs, which is going to give you a drop of about 1 inch, helping to clean up some of that fender gap. Of course, anytime you lower the vehicle, it is also going to help with the handling and the feel of the vehicle overall. Something that you also may consider at that step would be a set of wheels and tires. Now, I'm not gonna go too in-depth with this because there are a lot of different combinations and pricing on something like that varies greatly, but we can generalize somewhere around the $1,500 range for this setup. So, if you're keeping track of all this, you're going to be getting around that 400 wheel horsepower mark if you are on a base or sport Q50 or Q60, with a little bit more coming from the Red Sport model. On a scale of 1 to 10 for the drivability and reliability of the vehicle, you're not really changing all that much besides the power and the look of the vehicle, so it stays at a 10. Speaking of reliability, something that you may also consider at this stage, or really any of the other steps, would be the water pump. Now, this is something that we experienced in our own Q60 and something that we didn't do soon enough, so we would suggest getting one of those put on the car anytime you're looking to make more power. One of these guys from the aftermarket is going to run you right around that $500 range. Now, not a whole lot of performance to be picked up, but there's something to be said about the reliability and the power of a vehicle, and this is going to help with that reliability. All right, if you made it this far, hold up for just 1 second. We here at MAPerformance are celebrating our 15-year anniversary as a company, which is a huge achievement for us here personally, and we want to thank all of you for the support throughout the years. In order to celebrate our 15-year anniversary, we're pulling a full Willy Wonka 10 mil golden socket giveaway. Now, I want to make some clarifications because some people have been receiving silver 10mm sockets, and that's just our way of saying thank you. However, you're looking for the gold 10mm socket. We're giving these away to any order that is placed now through the end of September, and any dollar amount qualifies to enter. All you have to do is visit MAPerformance.com, give us a call, or place an order online. You'll be entered to win a $1,500 MAPerformance gift card, so that you can continue to building your Civic Si with all the awesome parts in this video. We also have some awesome new designs for our 15-year anniversary going on to t-shirts, with all of the proceeds of those going to Direct Relief, which is a disaster relief organization. So order today for your chance to win, and check out the website for more information. Back to our regular scheduled content here. We are moving on from our mild build into our medium build for your Q50 or 60. This would be considered more of the medium build, somebody that's looking for a bit more power or is potentially looking at doing the occasional track day. This is exactly what we did with our own Q60 at our Proving Grounds event recently, and it was an absolute blast. So the first thing at this step, assuming that you've already taken care of that water pump, is going to be the heat exchanger system on these vehicles. Now, a little bit different than your typical air-to-air intercooler. These are going to use an air-to-water intercooler. Therefore, you're going to have 2 of these on each of the intake system, as well as the radiator, if you will, up front. As with many of these modifications, this alone is not going to net you a whole lot of power, but this in conjunction with other supporting mods and a tune will get you a significant amount of power. We'll talk about that in just a second. After you take care of those heat exchangers, you're going to leave a little bit downstream to the downpipes on the car. On most modern day vehicles, this is going to be one of the most restrictive pieces on the car, so swapping these out with something that can breathe a little bit more is going to allow you to turn up the boost and make more power out of the car. Now, with just doing the downpipes, you can start to see anywhere from about 50 wheel horsepower to about 60 wheel horsepower. And this in conjunction with something like the heat exchangers and those components from the mild build will get you right in that ballpark of about 450 to about 475 wheel horsepower, which is going to be significantly more than those stock Red Sports. So speaking of adding more power to the car, you of course need a fuel system that can keep up with all those other components. So for those of you that have flex fuel available, a flex fuel kit is going to do wonders and make your life a bit easier when it comes time to trying to squeeze as much power out as you can. Now with the flex fuel kits, again, it really depends on how much ethanol you're going to be running, but you can expect somewhere between 50 and about 60 horsepower gains when running some form of ethanol. One of these kits is going to set you back about $500 depending on the brand that you go with. If you are picking up one of these flex fuel kits, we would also suggest picking up a fuel filter kit to make sure that all that ethanol that's coming into the engine is nice and clean and you don't have any issues with contaminated fuel. One of these guys is going to run you about $250, but is well worth the extra protection that it comes with. We would also suggest picking up a fuel pump, and that's the intake fuel pump, not the high pressure fuel pump that we'll talk about in just a minute. Now, it isn't completely necessary at this point. However, on our own Q60, we did start to notice issues when running ethanol with about 40,000 miles on the car. So again, for peace of mind, we would suggest picking one of those up, and they're only gonna set you back about $200. So with power out of the way, for the guys on the street who wanna go a little bit lower than your typical springs, or maybe you are looking to track the car, the next step would be a set of coilovers. Again, there's a huge variety of different options out there on the market, but they'll run you somewhere around that $1,000 to about $1,500 and a little bit more if you're looking for something higher end. This can dramatically change the appearance of the vehicle and of course the handling as well. Sticking with that track day theme, something you also may consider picking up at this step would be a set of sway bars for the front and rear to help with that track responsiveness and get around the track just a little bit faster. All of those suspension components aren't going to do much for you if you can't stop when it comes time to take that next corner. So you may also look at doing a set of performance brake pads. Of course, the OEM ones are just fine for street driving, but once you're on the track, something a little bit more aggressive and with more bite is going to be beneficial. And if you get the right pads, you won't have to worry too much about dusting or squealing on the street. Okay, so if you've been keeping a tally on this medium build so far, you can see that there's quite a difference in pricing, but for that price, you're gonna have a very capable car that you can bring to the track and get you right around that 450 to about 550 wheel horsepower, which is pretty awesome considering the fact that on a scale of 1 to 10, you're still going to be sitting at about an 8 in terms of reliability and drivability. There's not too much to worry about on these cars at this stage, with the exception of maybe the transmission starting to have some issues keeping up with the torque number, or if you run into any fuel quality issues. However, I wouldn't consider that so much a con of the car as it is the fuel that you're using. And before we go any further, I just want to say this next step is really for those guys that are gunning for high horsepower builds and aren't afraid to put their money where their mouths are. And you'll see why in just a second. So that brings us on to our hot build. This, of course, is going to be where power is really going to be determined by how much you're looking to spend on the car and, of course, what your goals are with the car. So first and foremost, you're going to need to upgrade that fuel system. Most of these modern day direct injection cars suffer from the same thing. Although you're able to make more power out of the stock fuel system, you also run into more of a hard limit. So the first thing you're going to need to do is upgrade that high pressure fuel pump, since you've already taken care of the low pressure intake pump. There's a couple of different options out there on the market, again, depending on your power goals. Now, if that's something that you have questions on, you can always give us a call or shoot us an email or talk to whoever is going to be tuning the car. More on that in just a second. Along with the high pressure fuel pump, you're also going to need some bigger injectors. Now, because it is, again, that direct injection system, a little bit different than your standard injectors, and they do cost a little bit more. Now, with these two mods, you're going to be able to support a significant amount of horsepower, again, depending on what you're looking to do with the car and the size of the turbos that you go with. Speaking of turbos, that's what we're going to be talking about next. Of course, being a twin turbo, you are going to be looking at doing 2 turbos on this car instead of 1, and it is going to come with a little bit of extra cost. Now, there's a big variance depending on the size of the turbo that you want to go with, and that really comes down to your goals with the car as well as how much power you want to make. As a common theme, when you add more power to the car, you have to wonder to yourself, am I going to be able to stop that much power? Now, a good set of aftermarket performance pads will allow you to stop significantly better on the street and usually be just fine. But if you are planning on tracking the car, at this point you would want to look into doing a big brake kit. Now, you can do some of the aftermarket OEM kits, such as adding brackets for GTR brakes, or you can go with your traditional big brake setup. Either one of those will be just fine for your application. Really just depends if you want to be able to say, I have GTR brakes on my Q50. Now, being that this platform is relatively new, the limits are always being pushed and always being tested. We've been doing plenty of R&D on our own here at MAPerformance, as well as plenty of other companies out there. So as far as hard limits go, there isn't any so much at this point. However, around that 550 wheel horsepower mark is where we start to say you might want to look into an engine and the transmission as well. If you do end up wanting to push past that, an engine is gonna run you somewhere around that $4,500 range, up to about $6,000, again, depending on what components you're looking to put in there and how much power you wanna make. As far as the transmission goes, there's unfortunately not a whole lot of support for it out there. However, our friends over at AMS let us know of a company called Level 10 that did some work on their transmission for them. If you are to check out their website, you'll find that they have a package that they offer that runs about $5,000 to help hold the power. Now, this is something that you are going to have to speak with them on, again, depending on what you're looking to do with the car. So we would suggest reaching out to them in this case. Moving back from the transmission, you may also consider doing a drive shaft. Now, this may or may not be something that you need to worry about, but at about that, again, 550 wheel horsepower range, it is something that we would suggest doing for peace of mind. There's a couple on the market, however, they are going to run you about $1,000 for a carbon drive shaft, which is going to be significantly stronger than the factory and something that you don't have to worry about any longer. Again, moving further back from that, something that may also be of benefit for you, especially if you are taking the car on the track, would be an LSD. Now, this isn't something that you necessarily need, but it does help significantly in actually putting the power down. So at this stage, there's a lot more that you could go into if you wanted to, such as wheels and tires and body kits and that kind of thing. But this is going to conclude what we consider a hot build for this video. Again, this is where you get pretty serious about wanting to go fast, such as AMS's 800 wheel horsepower car. It is also where you start to make a lot of noise in the scene. So if that's your thing, then dive on in. As far as power is concerned, there's a lot of variables that go into it at this stage, but generally speaking, somewhere between that 550 to about 650 wheel horsepower is kind of that standard. Of course, the ability to make much more is out there. Again, we've seen up to about that 800 wheel horsepower mark so far. Drivability at this point actually remains pretty decent, as well as the reliability, assuming that you've done most of those routine maintenance items. And on a scale of 1 to 10, it's going to be in there about that 6 to 7 range. Most of that drivability, again, comes from the fact that you are at the end of the day driving an automatic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you want to go fast and not have to worry about it. A lot of the reliability, on the other hand, is going to be coming from the fact that you have a higher horsepower car, and when you up the power, more things tend to break as far as drive shafts or axles and that kind of thing. Not necessarily the engine, but some of those additional components. All right, guys, well, that wraps it up for our hot build here. Again, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it at this step, but for the purpose of this video, that will just about cover it. As a disclaimer, the power figures in this video are going to change depending on your specific car, the dyno that you're on, and the environment and condition of your car. So just take it all with a grain of salt. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching the video here. Let us know in the comments down below if there's anything else that you'd like to see from us and any other platforms that you'd like us to work on. As always, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and turn on that little bell notification so you can stay up to date on any of the new videos that we have released. Again, thanks for watching, and peace.